The park was a place of tranquility, an oasis of greenery amidst the concrete jungle. Its tall trees, lush grass, and blooming flowers offered solace and escape to those who sought it. But every Sunday at precisely 3 in the afternoon, there was a certain corner of the park where the air grew thick and the laughter of children and chatter of park-goers was swallowed up by an impenetrable silence. It was in this corner that 2 old friends met to play a game of chess. Their faces were ageless, their eyes deep pools of knowledge and wisdom. One man, with silver hair and a kindly smile, exuded a calming presence. He always arrived wearing the same white suit, the sunlight glinting off the gold cufflinks he wore. The other, a tall and gaunt figure, with jet black hair and a sardonic grin, donned a black suit with a scarlet tie. He carried an air of menace, as if he could taste the fear of those around him. The 2 men greeted each other cordially before setting up their game. The chessboard, crafted of ebony and ivory, seemed almost alive as the pieces moved with a will of their own. As they played, the world seemed to hold its breath. A whisper, a rumor, had spread among the people. God and the devil playing a game for the fate of humanity. Each week, the consequences of their game played out on the stage of the world. When the man in white won, the world rejoiced. Cures were found, wars ended, and hope was reborn. But when the man in black claimed victory, darkness fell like a shroud. Wars erupted, plagues spread, and the screams of the damned echoed through the night. The 2 old friends played, neither showing any emotion as the pieces moved across the board. Their expressions were masks, hiding the intensity of their concentration, the weight of the decisions they made. As the game progressed, the man in white moved a bishop, trapping his opponent's queen. The man in black stared at the board, his black eyes narrowing. He moved a pawn, sacrificing his queen, but opening up a line of attack against his opponent's king. The man in white frowned, glancing at the board and then at his opponent. "A bold move," he said, his voice a gentle rumble. "But at what cost?" The man in black chuckled, the sound like the rustle of dead leaves. "Sometimes sacrifices must be made," he replied, his voice smooth as silk, sending a shiver down the spine of anyone within earshot. After all, what is one queen in the grand scheme of things? Around them, the world trembled. In a distant land, a violent coup was staged and a queen fell, murdered in her sleep. Her kingdom plunged into chaos, blood running through the streets as brother turned against brother. The man in white sighed, a look of sorrow in his eyes. He moved his knight, capturing the black pawn, and the man in black countered by moving his rook. And so the game continued, the pieces dancing their deadly dance as the fates of countless souls hung in the balance. The sun dipped low in the sky, casting long shadows across the park. The chess match drew to a close, with each player maneuvering their remaining pieces with calculated precision. Spectators dared not to breathe, afraid to disturb the delicate balance between light and darkness. As the game unfolded, a storm brewed in the distance. Thunder rumbled ominously, echoing the tension that crackled in the air. News of a devastating hurricane reached the park, the winds howling like tortured souls as it ravaged the coastline, leaving a trail of destruction in its wake. The man in white winced, moving his king to safety. In another part of the world, the earth shook with violent rage, and a once thriving city crumbled to dust, burying its inhabitants beneath mountains of rubble. The man in black smirked, feeling the despair spread like a contagion through the hearts of men. With each move, the world teetered on the edge of salvation and damnation. The man in white moved a pawn forward, and in response, a young prodigy found the courage to share her voice with the world. Her music soared, lifting the spirits of all who heard it, and for a brief moment, hope flickered like a fragile flame. But the man in black would not be outdone. He slid his knight into position, and in the shadows of an alley, a man succumbed to his darkest urges, taking the life of an innocent. The world mourned, their hearts heavy with grief. The final moves approached, the outcome of the game uncertain. Both men wore expressions of quiet determination, their eyes locked onto the board, fully aware of the implications of each choice they made. Finally, the man in white leaned forward, moving his rook to corner the Black King. "Check," he whispered, his voice a bomb against the growing darkness. The man in black glanced at the board, then at his opponent, his eyes narrowing into slits. "You play well," he said, his voice a low growl. "But this is far from over." With a swift motion, he moved his king to safety, narrowly avoiding capture. The game continued, the balance hanging by a thread, the world waiting with bated breath for the final outcome. In the end, it was the man in white who declared victory, moving his queen to capture the Black King. A collective sigh of relief washed over the park, and the air seemed to lighten as if a great weight had been lifted. The world rejoiced as peace treaties were signed, and communities came together to rebuild the devastation left in the wake of war and disaster. The two old friends rose from their seats, shaking hands with a solemn grace. The man in black bowed his head, acknowledging his defeat. "Well played," he said, his voice tinged with both admiration and malice. "But remember, there's always next week." With that, the two men disappeared, leaving behind an empty chessboard and the echoes of their eternal struggle. The fate of humanity decided for now, but the world knew, deep in its bones, that the game was far from over. The days passed, and the world reveled in the light of the man in white's victory. Flowers bloomed, the laughter of children filled the air, and love blossomed in the most unexpected places. But as Sunday approached, a sense of unease crept into the hearts of the people, and the shadows seemed to grow longer, reaching out like skeletal fingers. In the corner of the park, the air once again grew thick and heavy, as if the very fabric of reality strained under the weight of an unseen presence. The two old friends arrived at their usual time, exchanging polite greetings before setting up the chessboard with practiced ease. The game began, each piece moving with a purpose, as if aware of the stakes at hand. Around them, the world watched and waited, the outcome of the match a harbinger of the fate that would befall them. As the man in black made his opening move, the earth trembled, a deep and primal rumble that seemed to emanate from the very core of the planet. Somewhere in the vast ocean, the waters stirred, and a colossal wave began to form, its crest climbing higher and higher until it towered above the land like a tower of doom. The man in white countered, his fingers steady as he moved his knight. High in the mountains, a team of climbers found their footing, rescuing a fellow adventurer who had been stranded for days. Their bravery and camaraderie served as a beacon of hope for those who bore witness to their actions. Back and forth, the game continued, the men trading blows as the world danced to their whims. The man in black advanced his queen, and a nation fell into famine, the cries of the starving echoing through the barren fields. The man in white replied, moving his bishop to protect his king, and a brilliant scientist made a groundbreaking discovery, offering a glimmer of hope for those suffering from a once untreatable disease. As the sun dipped below the horizon, casting the park in eerie twilight, the final moves of the game approached. With a wicked grin, the man in black moved his rook, placing the white king in check. The man in white frowned, his brow furrowing as he searched for a way to escape. But this time, there was no escape. With a triumphant laugh, the man in black moved his queen, capturing the white king and sealing his victory. The world seemed to shudder, as if recoiling from the blow, and a wave of darkness swept across the land. In the days that followed, the world was plunged into chaos. Wars erupted, fueled by greed and hatred, and the streets ran red with blood. Plague and pestilence spread unchecked, taking the lives of countless souls who cried out in agony. The laughter of children was replaced by the wailing of the bereaved, and the once bright flowers wilted beneath a sun that seemed to have lost its warmth. Despair hung heavy in the air, suffocating the last vestiges of hope. As the two old friends parted ways, the man in black whispered into the ear of the man in white, his voice a venomous hiss. "Your move, old friend." The man in white nodded solemnly, accepting the challenge. The game was lost, but the battle was far from over. For as long as there was light, there would be hope. And with each passing week, the two old friends would meet once more to play their eternal game for the fate of humanity. Months turned to years, and the world endured the ever-changing tides of fortune and despair as the old friends met weekly, locked in their endless contest. Each Sunday, the park held its breath, waiting to see which of the two would claim victory. It seemed as though the cycle would continue for all eternity, a delicate balance between light and darkness, hope and despair. But deep within the heart of the man in white, a plan began to form. He had grown weary of the suffering, of the constant struggle, and the never-ending dance between good and evil. He yearned for a world that could find its own way, no longer subject to the whims of a mere chess match. And so, as the two old friends sat down for their weekly game, the man in white made a bold proposal. "What if," he began, his voice steady and strong, "we played one final game, a match to decide the fate of humanity once and for all?" The man in black raised an eyebrow, a wicked smile spreading across his face. "You tire of our games, old friend? Very well. I accept your challenge." The game began, the weight of the world resting on each and every move. The air in the park crackled with anticipation, the very fabric of reality, poised on the edge of a knife. Spectators watched in awe, their breaths held as the two old friends embarked on their final battle. The game was long and arduous, each man matching the other move for move. The world seemed to hold its breath, waiting for the outcome that would determine its fate. The sun dipped low in the sky, casting an eerie glow over the park as the game reached its climax. In the end, it was the man in white who emerged victorious, his queen capturing the Black King in a final, decisive move. The man in black stared at the board, his black eyes burning with a mixture of anger and admiration. "Well played," he conceded, his voice dripping with resentment. As the two old friends shook hands one final time, the world began to change. A wave of light spread across the land, driving back the darkness and lifting the veil of despair. The wars ceased, the plagues receded, and the hearts of men were filled with a newfound hope. But this time, the balance did not tip entirely in favor of the light. The world was no longer subject to the whims of the two old friends, no longer a pawn in their cosmic game. Instead, humanity was given a choice, to choose its own path, to create its own destiny. And so, the old friends parted ways, their eternal struggle finally at an end. The man in white faded into the sunlight, his presence still felt in the warmth of a summer's day and the gentle breeze that whispered through the trees. The man in black retreated into the shadows, a reminder of the darkness that lingered in the hearts of men, waiting for the chance to strike. The park returned to its usual state, the laughter of children and the chatter of park goers filling the air. The corner where the old friends had played their game was now empty, but the memory of their battles lived on, a testament to the eternal struggle between good and evil. And in the hearts of humanity, a new chapter began, a future unwritten and full of possibility. The fate of the world now rested in their hands, a responsibility and a gift from the two old friends who had played their final game. At least against each other. You see, every Sunday in a park not far from you, you will likely find an old-timer, someone sitting in the corner of the park at a table, trying to make eye contact with a passerby. Would you fancy a game? He might then ask to someone that locks eyes with him. And so the devil sits patiently, waiting for his turn to play, waiting like a snake, ready to strike when the sun shines brightest and the world seems to be full of peace and harmony. When you think your life is going well and you are as happy as you've ever been, the serpent will strike you down. You see, good versus evil is a game that never ends. Sure, the chess match might be done, but another game will soon arise between the two old friends. Poker in Vegas, perhaps, or a game of shuffleboard on a cruise, or perhaps even a game of checkers on the park bench near your home. The game is irrelevant. As long as the happiness or suffering of mankind hung in the balance, the snake was willing to wait forever.